God is my source. God is my, what's the next word? Power. So I know you get tired of hearing it from me, but I'm going to just say it one more time anyway. We are powerful. We are more powerful than I think we ever realize and we ever give ourselves credit for. We have the power to change things, starting with ourselves. That's really the only place to start. But we can make changes in the world by changing ourselves. And we do that through the powers that we have. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said that we each have within us 12 powers. These are the 12 powers he named: faith, strength, wisdom, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, elimination, and life. That's a lot. At some point, we're going to realize that those aren't just powers that we have to ask for, but they're powers that are already in us, living in us. From the point that we're incarnated into this earth, we have these powers as a part of who we are. And we have to just learn how to master them and use them, not ask for them. They're already there. We are powerful. We are strong. And this morning, I want us to talk about one of the disciples that's associated with the power of faith, and that is the disciple Peter. Peter, as he was being called, was named Simon. You may remember that. And Simon means hearing. And his name meant that he was the appropriate disciple to be called first, because he could hear the message and the story that Jesus was telling and grasp it as being truth. And he could recognize Jesus as the actual Christ. Jesus, the Christ. So when he accepted being a disciple, then Jesus changed his name to Peter, which means the rock. And he said in Matthew, upon the rock, I will build my church. And he's not talking about upon a person. He's talking about upon our faith. This church is built on the faith of the people who are here. Each of the things that we do every day is built on our faith. Our power, the first one that's mentioned is faith, because everything else builds on the power of faith. So we want to make sure that we bolster that power and we continue to feed that power and to make it more powerful in each of us. And faith is the ability to believe, to intuit, and to perceive, or to have a conviction about something. According to the Revealing Word, which was written by Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. That's where the verse comes from that says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, which is tiny, tiny, you can do what? Move mountains. Here's the catch. We have to believe that. We have to believe in our own minds that we have that ability, that we have enough faith to move a mountain. We have to believe that faith is a part of who we are, and that all the faith that Peter possessed, we also can possess. And as we understand that oneness, and we understand, again, that it's not something that we have to ask for, but something that we need to master and to use, then we can become more faithful. When I was a child, I learned a song about the 12 disciples. I only remember one verse. I'm not singing it for you. But the verse said, Peter always made a fuss. Peter was impetuous. He knew hard times when he denied his Lord 3 times. No sooner had he fallen than he got right up, began again, and served anew his loving risen Lord. I think I remember that verse, one, because it had the word impetuous in it, and how do you forget that when you're a little kid? You don't even know what it means, but you're singing it anyway. So when I looked it up, I found out it was a lot like me. I think that's why I hung on to that one. Always making a fuss, always impetuous, always messing it up, always doing something that you probably weren't supposed to be doing, and knowing all of that time that there was forgiveness there. And knowing all of that time that people would let me get by with it, because I was at that point really cute, and people thought it was funny when I would say and do things and question things. And then as I became an adult, it was less funny, but it was more powerful to me, because my faith was built on all the things I'd been taught and told by other people. Now my faith is built on what I know and what I truly believe and is a part of me. And I invite you to get to that place in your life and invite you to come to that place where you can believe based on your faith, based on who you are and what you know to be true. So Peter, the impetuous one, had been into all these miracles. He had been to all the events where miracles had occurred, and he still had trouble believing. Okay, we're probably like that. Anybody ever experienced a miracle in your life? And then our faith goes right back down. And that's what Peter was doing. The story that I want to talk about today was preceded by Jesus feeding the 5,000. One of the things I find interesting is it was 5,000 men. And that's exactly how it was written in Scripture in the original part, because they didn't count the women and the children. Don't really know how many people he fed. We just know that there were 5,000 men there, and they were part of the ones who were fed. And Jesus began by giving a blessing and gratitude for the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes that were there. And then after he blessed it, he put it out. And when they brought in the leftovers, they had 12 baskets left over. So from that little bit of food came all of this food, according to the story. And Peter was a part of that. Peter was there and he watched it and he saw all of that happen, but he still had his own issues. He still had problems with the things that were going on around him, and he still questioned everything. And in Matthew 14, beginning in verse 22, right after the feeding of the 5,000, we find this. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. And he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him and said, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" Metaphysically, we are all the characters in that story. So a part of me is Jesus the divine. A part of me is Peter, who has faith. A part of me is the other disciples representing the other 11 powers that are there. A part of me is in that boat. And the boat represents our consciousness, where we are in our state of consciousness. Metaphysically, that's what it represents. And metaphysically, our feet represent understanding, our ability to spiritually see things. And water represents emotions. So think about that story for a moment. I'm in the boat. I'm frightened. Somebody comes walking toward me that I think immediately is a ghost. I'm more frightened now. And that person says, "Yeah, come on, get out and walk over here toward me." So you get out and you're walking on the water, and then you become frightened and you start to sink. I think that's the part of the story that most of us dwell on. "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I think that's where we put ourselves often. That's the part of the story where we end. But I want us to think about some other parts of that story today. Acknowledging that we're all the characters in that story, and knowing that I can really easily identify with Peter and the problems he was having, because when he got out in the water, all of his emotions and all of the other things started, all of the fear came in and he starts to sink. Ever feel like that? You don't have to raise your hand or shake your head, because if you're not raising your hand or shaking your head, you're not being honest. All of us at one time or another have been locked into fear and locked into those emotions that are tearing us up. But we can still walk on water. According to the characters, according to being all of those people, no matter what's going on, God is there. The divine is there. The Christ within each one of us is there. And he is always there. He is a part of us, just like those 12 powers. A part of us from the time of our incarnation. There is no separation between us and the divine, us and God. Years ago, there was a company. I love this because, if they can make $1, somebody's going to try. And they decided that they were going to put a bridge on the Sea of Galilee. Now, they didn't want to put the bridge over the Sea of Galilee. They wanted to put it just under the water. That way, you could pretend that you too could walk on water. And they were going to make $50 every time somebody gave them money to walk on water. Thankfully, the local officials declined that opportunity. But isn't that normal? I want to walk on water, but I want something that I know is solid underneath me. And I really want some handrails, even though they weren't going to put those on the bridge. I want to know that I am safe and that I can walk on water with no problems. But that's not the promise we get. The promise we get is simply you can walk on the water. And how do we walk on the water? The first thing we have to do is to get out of the boat. Many of us get very comfortable in that boat, in our state of consciousness, where we are and how things are going, and we're perfectly happy with it. And we're good with where we are. And we don't really want to change anything. We want to stay right where we are. There's no point for us to grow because we're not going to do anything with it. Some of us have been there. And we know that we need to move forth, and we need to bolster that faith, and we need to then move forward. And we need to answer when God says, come on out and walk on the water. Now, I think it's interesting what Peter said. Peter didn't go, wow, that looks like fun. I'm going to jump out and walk on the water too. What he said was, Jesus, if it's really you, let me walk on the water. That's your power of intuition. You know when a message that you're getting is from God or from your ego. We need to make sure that we're listening to the God part of us and that we step out to walk on that water. So how many of you have walked on water before? Everybody should raise your hand because you have. We think of it as walking on literal water. But I'm going to say when you're sick and you keep moving forward, you're walking on water. When you lose someone that you love and have been with them for a very long time, and you keep moving forward, you are walking on water. And when you are sick and ill and you have to have treatments, and those treatments are almost as bad as the sickness itself, and you keep moving forward, you are walking on water. We walk on water all the time. We see miracles all the time. We just forget that's what they are. We need somebody to remind us of where the miracles are in our life sometimes. A friend sent me another story about a rabbi, a priest, and a Southern Baptist minister. Since I used to be the latter of those, I'm going to make fun of that person in the story. So the rabbi, the priest, and the Southern Baptist minister come to a lake, and they don't know how to get across it. There's no bridge. There's no way to go around it. So they've got to go through the river, and it's deep, or through the lake. So the priest goes, no problem. And he hops around and gets to the other side of the lake. And the rabbi goes, well, that looked easy. I can do that too. So he jumps on the water, hops around, gets to the other side. Now the Baptist minister is sweating. He's walking all over erratically. He's nervous because he doesn't want to look bad in front of his colleagues that he doesn't know how to walk on the water. And the priest looks over at the rabbi when they see how he's reacting and said, do you think we should tell him where the rocks are? That's what we all need in life. Somebody to tell us where the rocks are. So if you don't have that person in your life, find them. Somebody who is brutally trustworthy and honest with you about everything. I used to work for somebody who only hired people who would say yes. And they were shocked when I said no. And they first knew they really made a bad hire. But secondly, they learned a lot in the years that I worked with them. Because I don't need a friend who will just say everything I do is great and everything I do is smart. No, I need somebody to call me on my stupid. I need somebody to let me know when I'm making a bad mistake or I'm about to do something wrong. I need somebody who's going to help me know where the rocks are when I get out into the water. But remember, you can walk on water anyway. Every time something is going on in your life, you have the opportunity to walk on water. You can do good in this world. Sometimes that seems hard, but we can each do the good that we need to do. God is our source. God is our power. Love is our source. Love is our power. All of those things are the power that we have to move forward and to keep moving forward. So what do we do to claim the good? The first thing we do is just get out of the boat. For a lot of us, that's a huge step. I find it hard to believe that Peter just jumped right out of the boat. I kind of picture Peter sticking one foot over and tapping the water just a little bit to make sure it was really going to hold him up. And I pictured that because that's exactly what Hank would do. I would be the one who's trying to go, okay, I want to make sure there really is some water down there and it really is solid and it's going to hold me. But what we need to do is learn how to just step forward, how to move forward, get out of that boat and go forward. Mark 9:24 is a story of a man who approached Jesus and said, I believe, but help my unbelief. Seems like a dichotomy there that doesn't quite fit together. I believe, but help my unbelief. So I think this is probably an honest statement that most of us could make. It's an admission of our struggle with faith and with dealing with the issues we need to deal with in life. Overcoming our doubts and increasing our faith. I believe. Help me to believe even more. Help me to believe stronger. Help my faith to grow so that I can get out of the boat and step over. Again, I think you get out of that boat all the time. Start to notice when you're out of the boat. Start to notice when you're walking on water and when you're part of the miracles that are going on around you. Notice and let that bolster your faith. As Unity of Central Florida, we have experienced many changes. We've gotten out of the boat. We changed our name. We lost our ministers. We lost a number of members. We gained others. We've been short of money, but all of our needs have been met. Every time we've been provided for. Every time we get out of the boat and walk on water, our needs are provided for. Our faith makes us whole. We're each doing the hard work that we were called to this earth to do, and that's evolving our soul. And this is part of the process, my friends. So as we grow and as we continue to build our faith, I'm not saying it was fun. I'm not saying it was necessary. I'm just saying it's where we are right now in life. So allow these stresses, these issues to bolster your faith, to bring you into knowing what is yours to do and then to do it. Unity minister Eric Butterworth said, dare to conceive of greater things for yourself. Dare to see yourself as strong, confident, successful, and possessed of the patience and stability to keep on moving in the direction of your dreams. Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, you shall become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. Your idea is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. Jim Palmer, who is a spiritual director and a religious trauma counselor, says, if we had the veil of our self-judgment, self-condemnation, self-hatred, self-criticism, self-shame, and all of those were pulled back, we would see just a glimpse of our infinite goodness, beauty, worth, and power. We would be utterly undone by the immeasurable possibilities and potentialities of what we are. And a final quote from Eric Butterworth: "The whole universe is on your side. Life is forever biased on the side of healing, on the side of overcoming, on the side of success. When you get yourself centered in the universal flow, you will become synchronized with the divine bias for good. We align ourselves with God. We bolster our faith based on what we are going through all the time, recognizing our faith and recognizing the miracles that happen all around us every day. And we get out of that boat and we walk on water. And like Peter, we're going to question, and we're going to have some denials along the way, and we're going to mess up. And what are we going to do? Get right back out of that boat and start walking on water again. That's who we are. And more importantly, that's who we're here to be.